I used to be an Apple fanboy, repping the Holy Trinity. This was back when I used to work in the first Apple store outside of America. But today, I'm going to explain why I decided to move away from the Apple iPhone and switch to the Google Pixel. So first of all, about 9 years ago, I used to work in the flagship Apple store in London, Regent Street, which was around about the transition period of when the visionary Steve Jobs handed the keys of the Apple empire over to Tim Cook. And at this time, the holy Apple Trinity was the perfect ecosystem of a laptop, mobile phone and tablet that just worked seamlessly together. Quite frankly, it was clear that during this time, the Apple MacBooks were by far better computers if you had any creative bone inside your body. The iPad was a device that no one had a need for, but once you got it, you somehow found a place for it in your day-to-day life.
Sag mal, Papa, habe ich dich noch gar nicht gefragt. Wie kommst du denn eigentlich mit dem neuen iPad zurecht, was wir dir zum Geburtstag geschenkt haben?
Gut.
Mit den ganzen Apps kommst du klar?
Was denn für Apps? Geh mal bitte einen Schritt zur Seite. So.
And then we come to the iPhones. Well, arguably, back then when I was working for Apple, the iPhones, in my opinion, were actually one of the best smartphones in the market when you take into consideration the software, the hardware, and the build quality. At the end of the day, they were a premium phone that managed to justify the higher price bracket simply because they were making better looking phones that felt like they were better quality than the others in the market. Now, the other big selling point was that the software was written specifically for the hardware, similar to the way in which Apple makes their MacBooks. And therefore, the software just made the phone work the way in which you expected it to. But then in 2016, Google decides to follow in Apple's footsteps and starts to make a phone in-house to match up to their already widely popular Android operating system that was being licensed out to all of the other mobile phone manufacturers in the world. And the first iteration of the Pixel phone, it was a good phone, but there were certain things like the materials used to build the phone that made the phone seem just a little inferior to an iPhone. However, one thing that they had nailed was the camera. From day one, Google had understood that the camera was the main thing that people use their phones for these days. And they had spent a good time of development in making sure that their camera was one of the best in the market. So all eyes were on Apple to see whether they could top this new Google phone's camera. And so then 1 year later, when the iPhone 8 came out, it ended up being pretty much a tie between the iPhone 8 and the Pixel 2, which was also the point at which I decided to switch to the Google Pixel. Now, the main reason for this is that I thought Google were actually innovating and trying to do something creative within the phone market with the different ways in which they were introducing AR and AI into their phones. And they have continually been able to produce iterations of their AI within their phones to provide really useful features, predominantly within the camera area, to make any average Joe an amazing photographer. And a lot of this was down to software, which meant that the lower end phones would also get some great software to make the photos just one of the best in the market. But Google went further to start introducing features where your phone can pick up a call and screen off annoying telemarketers without you having to even pick up the phone at all, and even be able to manage the battery life by the phone learning the way in which you use it, automatically turning down high intensity battery depleting actions when you're not using them. So the underlying factor here is that Google just seems to be innovating at a much higher rate than Apple currently are, mainly because they have put more manpower into developing a software. But alongside, they've also realized that the hardware needs to upgrade to catch up with their software needs, which is why they followed in Apple footsteps again this year in creating their own microchip to power their new lineup of Pixel 6s. Ultimately, this is a very similar approach that Elon Musk took with Tesla as well. He realized that the future is all in software, and so he's created a car that is by far more advanced than any other electric car in the market, simply because whenever a new feature is developed, it can be released to everyone with a Tesla at the touch of a button. That means you can get a completely new feature in your car overnight, whereas most of the other car makers out there will expect you to buy a whole new car. But this also seems to be the direction that Google are taking, when this year they emphasized that they will be guaranteeing that the Pixel 6 phones will receive security updates for at least 5 years, meaning that you can have a phone that will last longer. When Google is offering all this and more in a phone that is £200 cheaper than the Apple equivalent, plus there is a higher chance that the phone will last for a longer time, and also if you had pre-ordered the phone, you would have also been able to get Bose headphones that are worth up to £350, essentially making this phone around £550 cheaper than the Apple equivalent. Therefore, it makes it pretty much a no-brainer that the Google Pixel becomes my phone of choice. Now don't get me wrong, the iPhone is still a great phone, but I personally feel that you get more for your money with the Google flagship phones, which is why I bought the Google Pixel 6. And here's my unboxing of the phone. And if you want to know more about the phone and the new features, leave a comment down below and I'll create a follow-up video on it. Peace and love to all of you. See you in the next video. Bye.